Hello there, I am Emmett Stroke, and I'm going to make a little video here about sidewalk mapping in OpenStreetMap. So, OpenStreetMap has a number of different ways to add information about sidewalks in the street network. And before we get started on talking about all these things, I want to have a little example in mind here of how we would provide good pedestrian directions going from this Kaiser Permanente Bellevue Medical Center over to getting something neat over here at Chick-fil-A. And so what we could do is simply provide directions along the street network. So maybe we could go along this little service road here, hop onto the 116th here, and then go across 8th, and then there's Chick-fil-A over here. And that'd probably be good enough. But as you may notice here, this particular area of OpenStreetMap has a really good coverage and sidewalk information, and also crossing information here. So as you may notice, at the intersection of 116th and 8th, there are crossings on the north side of 8th, south sides of 8th, and the east side of 116th, but not on the west side of 116th. Probably has something to do with being really close to this ginormous freeway interchange over here. So the way that someone would experience walking from the medical center, they'd probably go along a path over here, maybe avoid these steps, and then they'd have to cross 116th, cross 8th, and then cross back over 116th, and then walk along this little path to Chick-fil-A. And so this kind of is a good demonstration of why it's good, if possible, to add information about sidewalks and crossings in OpenStreetMap. And so, as mentioned, I'm going to do a little overview of the different techniques of how to map sidewalks. So one way to do it without adding all the information about, or adding all the separate ways that are tagged as sidewalks, is to simply add a sidewalk tag to a highway, another way that has a highway tag. And so you can say there's a sidewalk on the left side, the right side, or both, and you can say that there's a sidewalk on both sides, the right, the left, none at all. Or you can say that there are sidewalks, but they're mapped as separate ways. So this is kind of probably a good way to kind of do this in bulk without spending all the time and effort to add the separate ways. However, eventually in this video, I'm going to show you how to add the sidewalks and crossings to separate ways. And so the way to do that is to add footways, add ways that represent either the sidewalks or the crossings. And you're going to add a whole bunch of ways and tag them with footway that's either crossing or sidewalk. And if you're making stuff in a parking lot, sometimes you can use axis aisle. But we're not going to focus on that right now. And then also, we can add additional information about the type of crossing. And so there can be like there's certain tags. You can add a crossing as a node, which indicates an intersection with another way. And you can say it's either with traffic signals or marked or unmarked. And you can also add them to the way, indicating that the crosswalk itself is marked or unmarked. And there's some additional things. I'm merely just going to show how to do marked or unmarked. And then another interesting thing about adding sidewalks and crossings as separate ways in OpenStreetMap is that you can add curb information. And so, screw up to the top here. So there's a way to tag these things in OpenStreetMap. These are called curb cuts, and usually when you have a sidewalk along a road, there is a curb separating the sidewalk from where people walk from the road where cars and stuff travel. And so there's a few common ways that a few common methods that you can tag a curb cut, either as raised, where there's no nice transition from the sidewalk down to the road, where it's lowered, where it's no more than 3 centimeters height between the road and the sidewalk, or if it's flush, meaning there's no transition that is apparent. And then there's also rolled. Maybe you encounter that in some places. And there's also driveways, but typically those are mapped separately as a driveway. And then you can always just say no if there's no curb present, if there's sort of like a sidewalk that transitions into the road or something. And then finally, one other nifty thing that can be done is to add the presence of tactile pavement. And so this indicates if there's a specific place at the curb cut, usually, where the presence of it can be detected with a blind lens stick. So typically if there's some knobs or something like this, then that would indicate that there's tactile pavement. And so going back to this original example here, we can see that, there's sidewalks and other footways that lead up to the intersection here, and then crossings that go all the way across. But once you add these curb information, there's some more interesting things that can be done with providing good directions in a trip planner. And to sort of demonstrate that, I'm going to open up this cool website called accessmap.io. And this is a map that shows a lot of the area of Seattle. And it has all these sidewalks and crossings and curb cuts mapped out. And it can do interesting things. You can, change your tolerance for the steepness and both uphill or downhill, and then get directions based on all these inputs. And one other interesting thing is that it also takes into account the presence of curb cuts. And so on here, there's a flag that's toggled that says that raised curbs should be avoided. And so this particular crossing here, it has a marked crosswalk, but there aren't any curb cuts. So someone that has a wheelchair, for example, would have some difficulty going across this crosswalk. And therefore, it's probably a better option to, instead of just crossing here, to stay on the sidewalk and then cross over here at a sidewalk that does have curb cuts. And so, as you can see, if those raised curbs are okay, if you toggle this off, and then this becomes the shorter way to go. All right, so now that I've showed all these things, actually, why don't I go ahead and show how this looks in OpenStreetMap. So right here, this is that area of downtown Seattle that I was just demonstrating. You may recognize the street pattern. And so I'm just going to look at this crossing right here, see how it's tagged in OpenStreetMap. All right, so I clicked on the edit. I'm in the edit mode of OpenStreetMap. Now I'm going to zoom in here. Click zoom, and here's our crossing here. So for whatever reason, not sure, it's tagged both uncontrolled and marked. Not sure what that means. But anyways, right here, this is we can see there are these nodes that are placed kind of at the border between the crosswalk and the sidewalk. And then there's a little extra footway that attaches itself to the sidewalk. And so this is important because we wouldn't want to place the curb cut in the middle of the sidewalk, because that might present difficulties, because there's no curb cut someone would experience if they were walking along the sidewalk here. But if they decide to cross the street, then there's a curb cut. And so right here, this is shown as a raised curb in the kind of feature type over here. If you look at the tags down here, you'll notice that it has a tag of a barrier is a curb, and then the curb is raised. So going over here to the curb tag, raised means it's something that's greater than 3 centimeters high in the transition between the sidewalk and the road, and therefore not accessible for people using a wheelchair. However, over here at this crossing here, you notice that it's tagged a little differently. The curb is lowered, and also there's some tactile paving. So this one is going to be okay for crossing in a wheelchair. And I guess one thing I should probably point out while I'm here, this one over here says there's a raised curb. So I'm not sure, maybe there's a little difference between the data in OpenStreetMap and the data in this axis map. But this one here is showing that there are curb ramps. And so my theory on that discrepancy is maybe they use this driveway over here to say, yeah, you can go on the driveway, call it a lowered curb. It's all good. Anywho, so that's an example here of how you would tag that. And I'm going to also now go ahead and just demonstrate how to make one of these intersections from scratch. So I've found a pretty good intersection to demonstrate this on over in Goldendale, Washington. As you can see, there's currently no sidewalks at all in here, but why not get started and make some? So I went into edit mode here, and I'm going to add some crossings and sidewalk information for just around this immediate intersection here. And so the satellite image, a little low quality, but we're going to augment that by bringing in some street view imagery. And so if we wanted to see if there's some better background satellite, we could toggle through these different backgrounds. The Bing imagery is the default, but there's also Esri, not really any better. This other one, maybe a little more contrasted. Mapbox, not that good for here right here. So there are a few others, but I think we'll just stick with Bing. But also there's additional map data that can be shown, and there's some data layers, but also what I find very, very useful when adding crosswalks and looking to see whether there's curb cuts and stuff, and also if there's a marked crossing or not, is to use the either Mapillary, OpenStreetCam, or Bing Street Side. So I'm gonna turn this on, but as you may notice, nothing happened. That's because oftentimes things like Mapillary or OpenStreetCam, just there's no coverage in some places. And even with Bing, there's sometimes not, but I think there are a few images here from Bing, so we're just going to use those. All right, let's get started here with making some crossings and sidewalks. So I'm going to close this here and take a look. I'm going to click on this image here and check this high resolution over here. And then see what we got. All right, so as you may notice, it shows what direction we're looking. So we're looking to the west over here. So this would be looking this way down Main Street for reference. All right, so on Main Street over here, it looks like there are lowered curbs with tactile pavement on this side, on the southwest side. And over here, it looks like lowered curbs, but no tactile pavement like that yellow stuff that's over here. And there are some sidewalks that go down the road that way and that way. And also a sidewalk that goes here. And maybe I'd call this an access aisle right here that goes along the parking spots. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and create some sidewalks on this side and this side. Okay, so I'm gonna start here where the crosswalk starts. So just drag a sidewalk. You know, the sidewalk goes for a while, but I'm gonna let someone else pick up where I left off, and what the heck, I'll just draw it all the way to the next crossing over here. Okay, so I click there, and kind of what I like to do is just hit X or escape, and then kind of end drawing that line. Now this menu over here popped up to select the feature type, and I'm gonna select sidewalk. And so it tagged it as a sidewalk over here. And if we look down here at the tags, it tagged as highway footway and footway sidewalk. And so it's going to render as a sidewalk. All right, now I'm going to do the same down here for this side. From the border with the crosswalk. And then I'm going to create a node right here because it bends a little bit. And then draw it down to the next road. Hit escape. And then cut it as a sidewalk. All right, there's some warnings here that sidewalk is disconnected from other roads, and we'll remedy that once I draw some crosswalks. Okay, so there's also this crosswalk over here. I'm gonna make another line and draw it up to the next road right there. I'll not worry about connecting that. I'll let that happen with some other edit. Escape, tag it as a sidewalk. So the reason I drew it across this sidewalk here is that I often find it easier to draw a sidewalk overlapping another thing, and then the warning will pop up, and then I can just say connect the features like this, and then it'll connect it, and kind of saves me a click, I think, and it draws a straighter line. So anywho, that's my personal preference. I'll show the other way to do it to provide an alternative. If you wanted to create a sidewalk that intersects with the other node, you can just go click, click, and then over here, remember there's a little access to the parking lot. So draw the sidewalk to over here, and then escape, tag it as a sidewalk. And now I'm gonna make a little access aisle down to here. Escape. And now the access aisle doesn't show up, so I'm gonna have to search for it. Access aisle. Just had to type that, so there's an access aisle. Okay, so I did the sidewalks on this side, and now let's see what's on the east side of the intersection. I'm gonna go back into a street view image. All right, so that's the westbound view. Let's swivel around. Okay, we got no sidewalk continuing over here, kind of like this gravel parking lot. But we do have two curb cuts over here, and then a sidewalk that continues down that way. And then marked crossing over here. And then we got a lowered curb here and another lowered curb over here, both with tactile pavement. And this looks like another either access aisle or maybe we could call it a sidewalk. I'm going to take a look at another street view image or street side image, being street side, to see what happens to this walkway over here. All right, so that's the alley that goes to the west. Here's that access aisle that we had it over here. And okay, so looks like there's this road that's more of an alley, and then a sidewalk that continues there. And there's a flush curb with some tactile pavement right here. Okay. I would probably just call this a sidewalk since it seems to continue along eventually. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that. All right, so I'm going to draw a sidewalk starting at the border with a crosswalk, drawing it down to here, and escape, call it a sidewalk. All right, so then this sidewalk continues along to the intersection over here, and it kind of goes around and stuff. But let's add that. So I'm gonna add a sidewalk here. I'm gonna click to begin tracing, and then this time I'll go ahead and just click here and to create a node that intersects with this other sidewalk. And I'll keep trying all the way to here. All right, call that a sidewalk. Okay, and so on this side there's that gravel parking lot. So what I'm going to do here is gonna start the sidewalk here. Have it go all the way here, and then I'll have it, you know what, it might actually make sense to end it over here. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, and then I'm going to go to the sidewalk, and then since the lowered curb, there were two lowered curbs on this side, so I'm going to create another sidewalk that goes from that curb cut to this sidewalk. Tag it a sidewalk. Call it good. Okay. So now it's time to make the crossings. All right, so let's go back to Street View since I already forgot what kind of crossings are over here. All right, so this here, these are two lowered curbs with no tactile pavement. So, or wait, what was that? All right, I'm actually going to create the crossings first. So let's focus on not the curb cuts at this moment, but the crossings. So there's some painted sidewalks that would indicate a marked crossing over there, over here, and over there. So each one of these crossings is going to be a marked crosswalk. So I'm going to create those, and I could click here to intersect with the road, but I'm going to just go all the way through and do that technique of dealing with the validation issue to create a node in the middle. And I'll show you why that might be a little more advantageous when making crosswalks. Okay, so I made the crosswalk. I'm gonna hit escape. And this is a marked crosswalk. So I searched for marked crosswalk. And so some crosswalks are raised above the road, but if the road sort of just doesn't change altitude, then it's just a marked crosswalk. So, excuse me, taking that a marked crosswalk. And now there's that validation issue of it crossing this street here. So I'm going to turn off this street side real quick to show. So I'm going to say connect the features. And as you may notice, when we connected the node, the two sidewalks over here, it just made a node. And this didn't need to have any tags since they're both sidewalks. But this one here, since it's a crosswalk intersecting with a road, it needs to have some tags to indicate what kind of crossing it is. And when we made this marked crosswalk, it automatically inherited those tags when creating this node. So as you can see, it's coded as a marked crossing. So highway crossing is marked. So yeah, that is, I find, kind of nifty when creating marked or unmarked crossings. All right, so we gotta connect these other three. So I'm just gonna go do that real quick here. I'm gonna connect this one, make it a marked crosswalk, connect the features along here, marked crosswalk, connect features, marked crosswalk, connect features. Okay, so now we've created the crossings over here, and now it is time to work on these curb cut information. All right, so yet again, I've forgotten where all the curb cuts are. Let's turn on street side again. Okay, so this northwest over here has lowered curbs but no tactile pavement. So how do we do that? Let's click on the nodes here. All right, so this is the transition between the sidewalk and the crossing. And what I'm going to do is going to change the feature type by clicking here. And then this brings up the menu of things it could be. And I have been, these are sort of my common feature types that I've used in previous sessions. So you can see that there's some common ones that have shown up for me. If I needed to search, I would search for lowered curb. All right, so it added the tags of barrier is a curb and the curb is lowered. However, the tactile pavement isn't set unless you edit it. And so I'm gonna say no, since there wasn't one of those yellow strips. All right, and then I can do that over here as well. Change the feature type to lowered curb and no tactile pavement. All right, let's check on the rest of the curb cuts. All right, over here we have two lowered curbs, and these ones do have tactile pavement. So click on the node, lowered curb, tactile pavement, yes. Now another way I've found that is kind of nifty, that to add these curb information in the editor here, what you can do is go down to these tags here. Instead of showing it as this table, you can just show it as text. And what I'm going to do is just copy all this text and go to this next node here. And then instead of selecting the feature and checking the tactile pavement, I'm just going to copy it right here. Then I'm going to click out, and it automatically gets set to all that. All right, two sides of the intersection to go here. Let's bring up some street side and see where we're at. All right, we got two more lowered curbs with tactile pavement on that side, and Okay, 2 more lower curbs with no tactile pavement on that side. Okay, so I'm just gonna click here, paste that information with the tactile pavement lower curb, paste it here, and then over here, these didn't have tactile pavement, so I'm gonna click on this one. This one has the proper tags. I'm just gonna copy this and then paste that, paste, and now this intersection is ready to go. Okay, as you may have noticed, I added some sidewalks and other things that kind of extend a little further, and I kind of feel a little guilty about not connecting this to the rest of the network, but I'm gonna spare you just going through the process of editing that, and I'm just gonna edit it on my own in another change set. But yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and save these edits here, and you know what, why not? I'll show you one more bonus thing here about adding information. One thing is you can look for whether there's stop signs. You can see a stop sign here. Doesn't look like there's any stop sign on that side, but there is a stop sign over here. So I'm going to add that there's stop sign over here. And the direction is, I really don't know here. Okay, that's the wrong way. So right now I'm coding which way the stop sign applies to and the direction of travel. And this little arrow here should be looking at the approaching traffic. So there's a stop sign over there, and there was one over here too. I'm gonna double click to add a node, click on the node, say it's a stop sign, and this one should be forward. Okay, so there. Added those stop signs, and I'm gonna save. All right, so my change set comment is gonna be added crosswalk or sidewalks and crosswalks. All right, and I'm gonna say upload. Okay, so creating the change set, uploading to OpenStreetMap, and there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna go back into the main view, and it will take a little while for it to show up here, but and now also one thing is that I'm gonna have to do a hard refresh to make sure that the tiles are refreshed. So let's just try that real quick. All right, it's still waiting. It may take a while for the tiles to show up again. And also on some of these other layers, like the cycle map, transport map, these ones take even longer to have your changes, but the standard map is pretty good about updating within a minute or two. So do a little refresh here. There we go. There are the crosswalks and sidewalks that I added as part of this video. All right, thanks for watching.